What kind of temptations will your children face as they go out into the regular world? It seems that this is the question that Solomon was wrestling with as he began to think about passing on wisdom to his children. Specifically, as he's trying to process through what his son will encounter in the days to come, he tries to imagine what kinds of things will tempt him. And I think it's very telling that the very first of all of the lessons deals with the temptation of profit. In this session together here, we're looking at lesson 1, which occurs in Proverbs chapter 1, verses 8 through 19. And we're just calling this the allure of profit. It seems that Solomon knows in the world out there, there will be a temptation to get more and more and more and more. And it's hard to know when to sort of stop, when to put a limit on how much we try to acquire. And so Solomon, it seems, is giving his son instruction on what to do in the midst of that. As we mentioned in the last session, in each one of these lessons in Proverbs 1 through 9, we get different characters that occur. The character that occurs here in this first lesson is the crowd. We could call this crowd by several different names. You could call it the gang or the peers, those around the individual. But it seems that whatever we choose to call them, this is the crowd, the group that the son would be tempted to go along with. So let's just jump in to this lesson together. He begins in verses 8 and 9 with the introduction. Here's what he says. "Listen, my son, to your father's instruction, and don't reject your mother's teaching. Both the father and the mother, it seems to me, have an equal voice in the instruction in the home." We're going to see this all throughout the book of Proverbs. The father, as he begins to lay out the instruction that the son needs to listen to, he will include both the instruction of the father and the instruction of the mother. The discipline of the father, the teaching of the mother. He says it lots of different ways, but father and mother are often held up right there together. And I think this suggests that there's a fair amount of instruction that happens right there in the home. And the father and the mother together have an equal voice in communicating this to the children and helping the children know what they should do as they move forward in life. And so, verse 8 is sort of this exhortation, right? Don't reject. Make sure you listen, my son. But then, in verse 9, we get the motivation. Why should the son listen? For what reason should the son not reject mother's teaching? Well, verse 9, "For they will be a garland of favor on your head and pendants around your neck." In other words, if you take these things, they will almost be physical symbols that you will wear on you, right? So the instruction in the teaching will be sort of this favor that rests on your head or pendants that you wear around your neck. They'll be almost visual reminders that they are with you all of the time, and they are increasing your status, perhaps even among the community in which you live. And so then in verses 10 and following, we get the content of the teaching. Here is what the son needs to hear as the father begins to tell him about the temptation of profit or the allure of profit. Verse 10, "My son, if sinners entice you, don't be persuaded." Remember, he's just told him to make sure he listens to the teaching of his father and mother. Why? Because the sinners, the crowd, is in competition with the parents. They are trying to pull the son away from their listening to their voice and instead entice him to follow their own voice, right? So don't go, he tells the son. Don't go along with them. In verse 11, now we really meet these characters in full. If they say, "Come with us, let's set an ambush and kill someone." Now, maybe this feels a little bit shocking for us. I mean, the word set an ambush there is predator word. It's a word that means kind of like lie in wait, and it's what animals do with their prey in the Old Testament. We're going to see this word pop up several times with individuals throughout Proverbs 1 through 9, and it suggests that there really are those who are trying to lie in wait in order that they might take advantage of somebody else. Let's attack, it says, some innocent person just for fun. Now, maybe this feels a little bit shocking. I don't know how often you have felt tempted by the crowd. I don't know how often you found, perhaps when you were young, maybe in elementary school or junior high or middle school, maybe even in high school, maybe you felt tempted to kind of go along with the crowd. Everybody else is doing something and you want to come along with them. I don't know what that temptation looked like. Maybe to go to party with them, or maybe it was to go and watch a certain type of movie with them, or maybe it was to go and engage in some certain activity with them. My guess is very rarely did the temptation come across like this. Hey, why don't you come with us and we'll lie in wait so that we can kill somebody? We'll just kill someone for fun. Hey, doesn't that sound like a good idea? My guess is this is not a temptation any of us have ever faced. My guess is also this was not a temptation that was a real temptation that his son was going to face. But this is sort of the beauty of Proverbs. What the father is doing, I think, is painting a very exaggerated picture. Sure, nobody actually talks like that. But that's because what the father is suggesting is that's actually what they're after. Maybe it doesn't sound like that coming out of their mouths initially, but this is actually what they want. Let me show you what I mean as we move forward. Verse 12. It says this, let's swallow them alive like Sheol. Sheol in the Old Testament is the place of the dead. It doesn't really distinguish, Sheol doesn't, between good and bad, like those who have lived a good life or those who have lived a bad life. It seems everybody goes to Sheol. What matters is how you go down to Sheol. And so it seems that what the sinners are saying is, come, let's swallow them alive like death itself. We'll take them down to the grave, whole, like those who go down to the pit. Verse 13, this is the reason they want to lie in wait and kill someone. We'll find all kinds of valuable property and fill our houses with plunder. Throw in your lot with us, and we'll all share the loot. There we go. Now we get the plan. The plan is to get rich quick and to split the profits among us. In other words, the father is telling the son, beware of these schemes, of these plans to make money quickly. Watch out, because oftentimes there's some sort of exploitation involved. So he's trying to tell the son, guard against it. Watch out for it. Listen to my words and don't be enticed by the sinners who surround you. And so he goes on in verse 15, my son, don't travel that road with them or set foot on their path. I think it's interesting to sort of ponder here the idea of a path. You know, if you're just thinking about an open field, there's lots of grass, perhaps lots of flowers right there in the field, but there's not really a path until someone travels through it. But even then, a path really cannot be created just by someone walking down a certain way one time. No, a path is created by the trotting of many feet. Many feet make a path. You go down this way many times, you travel this specific way many times, and now the path is created. And so what the father is saying is they have charted a course for themselves. They have plotted down this road for themselves, and it's a road to destruction. He says, son, don't go with them. Don't set your feet on their path. Don't travel there with them. We think about Psalm chapter 1, right? Blessed is the man. Blessed is the individual. Blessed is the person who doesn't walk, stand, or sit with the unrighteous people, with the sinners, with the scoffers, with those who have no delight in the fear of the Lord, with those who reject the Lord and his commands. Don't walk, stand, or sit with them. Instead, Psalm 1 says, but blessed is the one whose delight is in the Torah of the Lord, the instruction of God. And in this law, in this instruction, in this Torah, he meditates day and night. In other words, Psalm 1 is even saying, the best way is not the path that goes with the wicked. The best way is the path that just sits with the word of God. I think that's essentially what the Father is trying to say here. Verse 16, because their feet run toward evil, and they hurry to shed blood. They're quick, they're fast, in order that they might be able to kill people or to shed blood or to take life. And then we get to verse 17. I think Proverbs 1:17 is one of the most helpful verses in all of Proverbs because what it gives us, I think, is an interpretive key for understanding the lessons. Again, what we're doing in these sessions is we're walking through the 10 lessons that the Father gives his Son in Proverbs chapter 1 through 9. What the Father is trying to do, I think, is explained in Proverbs 1:17. It is useless, he says, to spread a net where any bird can see it. Do you hear that? In other words, imagine you wanted to catch a bird. You wanted to take it for yourself, perhaps kill it and eat it. So you take a net, and while the bird is just perched right there watching what you're doing, it would be like taking a net and laying it down on the ground. What are the chances the bird's going to see you laying the net and then just hop right into the net? Probably pretty low, right? In vain, I think the Father is saying, would someone lay out a net in the sight of a bird? If the bird sees the net there, they're not going to want to be caught by it, right? It's the same way for people. If we can see that there's a trap, we're not going to step into it. If we can see that disaster awaits us right here, step here and you will have many problems. We're probably going to avoid stepping there. In other words, it's just in our nature to see a problem and avoid the problem. Father says, I think, this is exactly what I'm trying to do. Verse 18, but they set an ambush to kill themselves. They attack their own lives. What the Father is trying to do is he's trying to lay out for the Son, here's the net. I just want you to know, Son, that when you begin to hear the sinners enticing you, the wicked people around you, the crowd, hey, come with us. Come get profit. Come get rich quickly, and we'll share all of it together. When that happens, I want you to know this is the net. This is the trap that is being laid for you. Maybe it looks enticing, maybe it looks nice or enjoyable, but just so you know, verse 18, these individuals are setting an ambush actually for themselves. They're going to kill themselves. They attack their own lives. I think this is referring back to verse 11. When the Father began this section, right, these individuals, they lie in wait in order that they might kill somebody. The technical term for this is an inclusio. And that's what's happening here. The Father's wrapping around back at the end to say, hey, they're setting an ambush in order that they might kill, but you know who they actually are really setting an ambush for? Themselves. They're actually killing themselves. They attack their own lives, and they don't even know it. The sinners are clueless. And so what the Father, I think, is saying is, my son, watch out. Be careful that you don't go down the path with them, because their path is destruction. And in telling his son all of these things, what he's doing is he's essentially clearing away the leaves. He's helping to show the son, look, my son, there is a net hidden right here to snag you, to catch you, to trap you. Don't step in the trap. Don't do it. I'm showing you, I'm pushing the things out of the way to make it very obvious to you that there is a trap here. So avoid it, stay away from it, and life will be better for you. And so, verse 19, then we get the summary, the conclusion of this first lesson. And he says this, such are the paths of all who make profit dishonestly. It takes the lives of those who receive it. Now, what he's essentially saying here, in Hebrew, it says something like, don't cut a cut, which is essentially saying, don't ensure a devious profit. Don't be like one of those who ensures that they get profit, but they do it they do it with devious motives, or they're doing it with distorted motivation. Koptak says, "Beware of desire that knows no bounds." And I think this is a good word for us as we sort of step back from this first lesson and we reflect on what the Father is saying to the Son. I think we need to ask ourselves the question, are there ever times when we are tempted to cheat? Sure, perhaps we're not in school anymore where we can look at the paper of the person next to us and write their answers down as our own. But that's not the only way to cheat, right? There's lots of different ways that we might cheat in life, that we might be able to listen to the voice of the crowd, like what the Father is suggesting here, the crowd who would want us to come along with them in order that we all might be able to profit together. In what ways, then, are we ourselves tempted to cheat? Perhaps we're tempted to cheat when it comes to time. I think one of the clearest instructions in the Old Testament is that God sets aside time for the people of Israel to stop and to rest and reflect. He has built into the rhythm of creation even this idea of rest. And so, how do you work? Do you have built into your life healthy rhythms of work and rest? I've found more and more in my life as I've tried to develop the practice of Sabbath and make this thing that our family does, that I'm often tempted to cheat the Sabbath. I'm often tempted to cheat rest. I feel like our culture is driven by consumerism. It's driven by productivity. And if I stop and I don't do anything, I even start to feel a little bit guilty. I'm not being productive enough. And so sometimes I'll be tempted to stay at the office just a little bit later. I'll be tempted to work on that project just a little bit longer. I'll be tempted to keep going and neglect my family, neglect rest, just so that I can get more done, so I can be more productive. And I think in those moments, it's good for me to hear these words. The allure of profit is always there, but it takes away the life of that one who seeks it. So don't buy into the lie that there is endless joy and endless happiness in being productive or in cheating the Sabbath. Are you cheating perhaps in your spending? Are you spending more money than you're getting? Is your output financially greater than your input financially? Are you living beyond your means? Be careful. Is it your identity? Perhaps you're tempted to cheat who you really are because of the temptation of people around you. And so be careful. Watch yourself that you don't be like one who falls in with the voice of the crowd. Perhaps most poignantly, we can remember the story of Solomon's own son. If this was written by Solomon to his children, specifically to his son, we think about his son Rehoboam, who we meet, who ends up becoming king over Israel. And yet, as Rehoboam comes into power, all of the people come to Rehoboam and they begin to cry out to him. They said, "Hey, your dad Solomon made our burden so heavy. Please, will you lighten our burden for us?" And what does Rehoboam do? He says, "Go away for a few days and let me consult with my advisors." So first, he consults with the older, wiser ones, those who advised his father. And he says, "What should I do? How should I respond to them?" And they say, what you should do is listen to them. If you will hear them on this issue, that they're feeling overworked and overtaxed and overburdened, if you'll listen to that and show them some leniency here, you'll have their devotion. It'll be good for you and good for the kingdom. But that didn't seem very good to Rehoboam, so he decided to ask his friends, his buddies, those who are along with him. And he says to them, "Hey, what do you think I should do?" And the friends say, "Oh, we know what you should do. You should say, well, my father may have disciplined you with sticks, but I'm going to do it with scorpions. In fact, my father may have been a little bit weak. I'm going to be strong. I'm going to be even more powerful." They say it a little cruder than that, but that's essentially what they say. And what does Rehoboam do? He takes the advice of the crowd. He listens to the gang. He listens to his peers. In other words, he ignores his father's advice that his father gave him in the very first lesson here. And as a result, the kingdom of Israel splits into two. From this point forward in Israel's history, it becomes not the kingdom of Israel, but rather the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah. Rehoboam is left governing Judah, not all of Israel. Why did this happen? It seems because he refused to listen to the words of his father. And so it's a stark warning for us to make sure that we're always guarding, we're always watching ourselves, that we don't go down the path of the wicked, that we make sure we avoid the allure of profit.